It's time for baseball's last frontier, stories from the Pecos League, the podcast that will open your door to baseball's entry level, telling you the stories of the teams, players, and coaches of an independent minor league circuit. I'm your host, Bruce McClure, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to my friend, partner, and co-host, not to mention the Roswell Invaders pitching coach, Evan Katz. Evan, how we doing?
Oh, just great. It's Memorial Day. We've been in training camp for 6 days. I think the last time we talked, I was still on the road from central Oklahoma. It was really interesting as I watched the thermometer on my car rise as I came across Oklahoma into Texas, into New Mexico, and I'm here in Roswell at home right now. We're having an evening practice tonight, home with my host family, I should say, and getting ready for practice tonight at 6 o'clock.
Now, let's talk about the weather down there for a minute. I don't know much about the weather or climate of New Mexico, except to say that you're in more of a desert climate than I am up here in northern New England. But what's it like down there? What's mid-spring in New Mexico like?
Well, Roswell, New Mexico is in the southeast corner of New Mexico. There are many sections of New Mexico that are up in the mountains. They're pretty temperate, some resort towns, but we are in the desert, and the temperature is well above 95 degrees every day. It will get over 100 a couple of times this week, and it's something that I think a lot of our players have dealt with heat, but it is a different kind of heat. We've had practice during the day, and the gallons of water that guys go through is just astounding. I'm coaching. I'm not running around, and I'm going through 3/4 of a gallon of water a day to stay hydrated. And it is so important when you're an athlete to be mindful of keeping your body hydrated. And the manager has talked about it, Garrett Totty, reminding the players about staying hydrated. And it's really important because we're in training camp. Guys are trying to earn a roster spot. And so we manage the heat the best we can, and just be mindful of it, because it can really degrade your production on the field if you don't stay hydrated, and also, of course, if you're not eating well.
From this point forward in the good weather, I'm not going to complain about the heat when it comes up here in New Hampshire. Oh man. I can only imagine. What's the look like this week for you guys down there?
I mean, it is desert, so it's kind of odd because it is scorching, just scorching from probably about 10 o'clock in the morning until 5 or 6 o'clock at night. But being in the desert, it also cools off. We had practice last night. We assembled at the field somewhere around 5. It was pretty warm, but after the sun went down, it was in I think in the low 80s, and it drops to the 60s overnight. And it's actually very comfortable in the evening, which is one of the reasons why our games all start at 6:30, is so that players come to the park when it's hot, but it's cool enough for the players and for the fans. We want the fans to be comfortable too, and it's a really beautiful night to sit at the park when it's in the 80s. Often there's a breeze, and it's very comfortable in the evening.
I'll take the evening weather, that's for sure. So let's segue into training camp. Training camp opened, I think it was last Thursday, right?
I believe so. This is the 6th day. Yeah, players have been arriving since the 22nd, depending on their responsibilities and commitments, their player status. If they've been released or being released from another team, we've had 1 or 2 players coming into camp every day. I think we're going to have about 25 players today.
That's a pretty good sized roster for this league.
Well, the total number we can carry is 25, 22 are active, and we always like to have choices. We're all pitchers, catchers, infielders, and outfielders. We like to have options, and we've got some good competition underway for spots on the team. So we've got a good group of guys, and we have more guys coming in again over the next few days between now and opening day.
Well, I know before that competition got started, you guys got to the field and I heard a little rumor that you were pressed into service as an impromptu groundskeeper. Is that true?
Well, we all do groundskeeping. I mean, if you're talking about the surprise we had with the sprinkler system the other night, I fortunately was not there, but it's really kind of interesting. You know, one of the things about the Pecos League is you never know what's going to happen, and you have to be able to adjust and do your 180. You know, we've been practicing every day, showing up at the field at 9 o'clock to avoid the heat, trying to wrap up in the afternoon so guys could go home and regroup and come back. And the other night, we were watering the field at night, which we like to do because the water sits and absorbs a lot better, helps on the mound and the dirt. And there was a break in the line that comes up behind the mound, and the field started flooding. Thankfully, we were able to get a hold of the Roswell water department to come shut it off relatively quickly after about 45 minutes. But what happened is we flipped things around, and Garrett Totty, the manager, he had wanted to have us practice at night before the season started anyway, so players could get used to the lights, see how the temperatures change, how the air changes as it relates to fly balls. You know, fly balls tend to travel a little more during the day. It's also a little windier here. And so we took advantage of the flooding of the field yesterday to move practice to last night. So we did it last night. And so tonight we're also doing the same thing, having other practice at night. So we took an unexpected surprise and turned it into a positive because we were going to do that anyway. And the players adjusted really well. And it was important. I was talking to a couple of players, and they was really helpful around dusk. We don't have this is the minor leagues, we don't have the best lighting. Dusk tends to be a little more difficult for batters and for outfielders, but once it gets dark, the lights work a little better and the players can track the ball well, and it was good for them to have a chance to see that.
I don't think that I'm the only guy listening to this show right now thinking about the scene from Bull Durham where Kevin Costner is standing there saying, wow, we got a regular thunderstorm here or something like that.
Yeah.
You got to the ballpark, and I understand you had to do a little mowing too, huh?
Mowing, yep. There was we have to. The communication is always takes some refinement to get everything mowed. We ended up having to get a lawnmower to help put the finishing touches on the infield grass. You know, we can be a little more flexible with what happens in the outfield, but we had to have a delivery of a handheld mower so we could get the infield grass where it needs to be. And again, this is all part of minor league baseball, and then the team has to do the extra work. The players maintain the field. There's been a couple of lips on the field that have gotten built up over time. Guys went out there with shovels. They went out and weeded to kind of push down the lips in front of the bases over a third base, particularly. There are lips other places, but there are a lot of them are behind the fielders going into the outfield. But the players have worked really hard. We put a lot of time in the first couple of days raking, doing a little bit of landscaping, and the field is looking really good. There's an irrigation system, so we got nice green grass. We got beautiful dark clay. It looks really nice. We got emerald green outfield fence and stands, and it's really a very presentable ballpark, and it's a very playable ballpark for the players.
This is part of the allure of baseball's entry level. You do more, the players do more than just play or coach or whatever it might be. There's so much that needs to be done to get a ballpark ready for game day. I know I was in minor league baseball for an awfully long time in a front office of a AA team. And I was out there pulling tarp or hanging bunting or whatever it might be. And it was, an hour before game time, we're trying to get things ready for a Saturday night game. And this was AA. So I can only imagine the things that crop up in this level of minor league baseball.
Right. I mean, the players understand this. I mean, this is one of the parts of lower level minor leagues, and the players do a lot of the field work, preparing before and after the game. and it's just part of what they do. We work it into the daily schedule, and the players really take pride. They take pride for a couple of reasons. One, they want to make the field playable so they can react to batted balls and the balls play true. But they also want it to look good. You know, we have people coming to the games. We want them to see good baseball. We want them to see an attractive field because we want to draw fans. We want to get fans into the park, and that's part of how we do it is playing good baseball on the field and having a field that looks good. So they take great pride in the work they do on the field.
You've had training camp open for a few days, and one of the things that you and I were talking about as we were setting up our time today is the fact that you and manager Garrett Totty set the tone from the moment the proverbial doors open. Tell me about that. How does a pitching coach and a manager of a team at this level set the tone for these kids to begin this season?
Well, there's really two levels that I think you've touched on it. Garrett has managed for several years, and I don't want to steal his lines, but he has made it very clear. This is professional baseball. You show up on time. You need to play hard, and you don't need to have any distractions. No distractions. So that when you show up, you're ready to go. And he has emphasized that from the beginning in terms of his expectations, about arrival times, keeps an eye. You know, this is the saying in baseball, you know, players, baseball field's pretty big. You know, it's thousands and thousands of square feet. And there's a line that managers see everything. And you can be sure that Garrett has kept a keen eye, whether it's in the dugout, guys shagging fly balls in the outfield, see what's going on in the bullpen. He makes it very clear what his expectations are, and he's got an eye out to make sure that those expectations are being met. With the pitchers, and we always joke, pitchers always joke that we're different. And you know, as an adult pitcher, and as my brief professional pitching career, we know we're different. And as pitching coach, you know, we have that same rigorous approach, but because pitchers are going to not always throw strikes, pitchers are going to give up hits. It's a constant setting of the tone that you're learning, you're improving, you want to set a performance base and do better, you want to get smarter. So we take, you know, the rigorous approach that Garrett has, bring it into the whole pitching approach of being supportive, but at the same time also having high expectations that if you do well, you have to repeat. And if you need to improve on something, you're going to work harder on it. And we've emphasized that for the last 6 days. And the other thing that we do, just like a batter at the plate in terms of pitch selection and their swing and the results of a batted ball, we're talking to the pitchers constantly about their pitch selection, evaluating who the hitter is, what's the situation, so that they take an expansive view of what's in front of them and who's catching them, what's the communication with the catcher. So we take that rigor, we bring it to generating results on the mound, and we share that with the pitchers every day.
I've heard you use the word rigor several times in that previous answer, and I also heard you use the word support. Sounds like you're combining Garrett's rigorous outlook with a very supportive outlook on your part and your style of coaching a pitching staff. Can you expand on what it means to be supportive of these young men inside this? Now, let me rephrase that. Can you expand on the word support when it has to deal with both inside and, I'm assuming, outside the game of play?
Sure. I mean, and the thing is, you always want to reinforce positive things, and support also applies to when things don't go well. And sometimes a pitcher, we had live at bats the other day. We had, I can't remember, you probably had pretty much, I think all of our pitchers threw live at bats.
Mm-hmm.
Which what that means is the pitcher is throwing to a batter with a catcher in place. We have the batting cage in place. There are no fielders in their positions. It's just a simulated at bat for the pitcher and the batter. And it's a very good way to measure what's going on. And so when you've got a pitcher out there who pitches to 3 or 4 guys, we had one pitcher had the first batter he was facing had a 3-2 count. He had the confidence to throw a 3-2 curveball in his first live at bat of the spring, and he got the batter out. So one of the things I did the next day was let him know that took a lot of courage. A lot of guys might have thrown a fastball. Breaking pitches are a little harder to control, especially if you're in the early stages of training camp. So you support that type of effort. If you have we had a couple of pitchers that really struggled. One that doesn't throw that hard. He really relies on his location. And in a situation like that, afterwards, we talked about with the types of pitches that he throws. The hitters got, his pitches were up a little bit, and his hitters got behind the ball and got it out over where the infielders would have been standing, and they would have been when base hits. Pitcher like that, we're supportive in saying, I liked the type of pitch that you threw, but I think it may work a little better if you can get the ball down. And so that way the batter hit there's a greater chance that he's going to hit it on the ground. And so you're supportive in the sense of refining how somebody approaches a batter. We had another pitcher who I believe gave up 2 home runs, and that led to a little bit of information sharing about who you're facing. And if you're going to make a first pitch, one was a first pitch home run, the second one wasn't, who's the batter? And if you're going to try to make your first pitch or your pitches to that batter, where are you going to miss? You want to miss inside or outside, or you want to miss down. If you're trying to throw a pitch down and you miss up and you're facing a power hitter and it's over the middle of the plate, he's going to hit it out. So we were supportive in the sense that as your pitching evolves, understand who you're facing, understand what your ability is, and if you make a pitch that you want to make sure that you've got a margin of error, and your margin of error is going to go the right way, and maybe the batter will take the pitch and let it go, or maybe he won't hit it as well, rather than hitting a home run. And we were supportive in the sense there and saying, here's what you need to do. So you want to reinforce the strong efforts of the pitchers, and you also want to be supportive of the guys who need to make changes. You don't want to be yelling and screaming at them and telling them that you're never going to make the team or something like that. That's not going to work. Baseball is a hard sport. I think some people may have heard it's one of the few sports where the defense controls the ball. You got to remember, basketball, hockey, football, soccer, the offense controls the ball. In baseball, the defense controls the ball. So it makes it harder for the hitter, but it also puts a big responsibility on the pitcher. And so you want to make sure they're taking advantage of as much as they can, the fact that they're holding the ball and they can dictate what happens when the ball leaves their hands.
One of the interesting things you said there just a moment ago is talking about the yelling and the screaming, and it had me thinking about how coaching staffs, managers ran their teams years ago. I'm thinking of guys like Lasorda and Weaver and a lot of those, you're going to do this my way or else guys. And that just doesn't work anymore, especially with today's young man who is driven so much by data and numbers and results and video. And granted, you don't have that down there, in the Pecos League, but it still speaks to the upbringing of these kids. They've had that in their past, and they've never really experienced that yelling and screaming. So carrying that through to their beginnings here in the Pecos League is a logical next step for them. Hopefully, as they move forward, they're going to continue to see that.
Well, I think that there's still plenty of baseball coaches that yell and scream, where they may not yell and scream, but their style reflects that. And I read Joe Madden's book, The Book of Joe, talking about his coming up as a player in the era of the managers that you mentioned, and how he evolved and how he liked to handle his players and the way he thinks he can get the best out of them. And it's not that you're not demanding, and it's not that you don't have high expectations. It's how you do it. And I think a lot of people watch pitchers on the mound, and you can even see this on comments about if a pitcher has a bad outing or a pitcher is struggling with a particular team. Someone in a comment section of some social media outlet says, that guy needs to get more angry on the mound and really show how tough he is or how mad he is. And I think I mentioned earlier, I spent a number of years at a baseball camp in Florida with professional pitching coaches, and I've been reminded myself and heard them remind other players not to let their emotions get ahead of you, because once your emotions start running, your muscles get tense, your mind gets tense, and it makes physical execution more difficult, and it makes having a relaxed mind more difficult. So you want to have a supportive learning environment, even if you are pushing a player and having high expectations and being demanding. And you have to allow the player to be able to execute in a way that's going to get the results that you want and the results that he wants.
These kids today have so many managers and coaches. You've got a manager and a coaching staff on whatever team they're playing on. And then you've got a manager and a coaching staff on every social media outlet there is today. I don't know how they do it. I'm on social media for my job with SABR, and there are times that I have to throw my hands up and walk away for a week because of the things that are said are just astounding to me when it comes to discussing a player or a player's performance in right down to an at bat or a pitch. And I don't know exactly how much a player on your level is going to get involved with social media or is going to hear about themselves on social media, but I can only imagine as they rise through the ranks how that affects their development and their outlook over time.
I think it's like any job. I mean, your social media is ever present, and so we try to get the players to focus at the field. And as coaches, whether it's Garrett or myself, we're trying to build relationships. We're the coaching team, the managing team that's going to be working with these guys. You want to build a relationship. You want to have an understanding so you can have constructive conversations and have constructive guidance. And there's people that they're going to be communicating with people at home. Some of them might have their own pitching or hitting instructors that they're going to be in communication with. It happens at the major league level. I mean, the major league coaches, they've got the same juggling act to do about establishing relationships, providing guidance, knowing that there's other things going on. But it's just so I think the key thing is look at the results that are coming out. If it's good results, you want to reinforce it. If the results that can be improved, you want to do that. And you try to develop the relationship with them that it's going to allow you to be part of the world around them that's guiding them in their professional career. Like I said, it's any other career. It's the exact same way. You're in the furniture business, and I'm sure that all you and your colleagues, you have managers on site, virtual managers, but you've also gathered your information about how you do your job from other places as well. This is how the world works today.
For those of you who don't know, I have been in furniture sales on a big box level and in a boutique store here in New Hampshire now for over 20 years. And even I see the critiques, I'll be kind, on social media of our business or our practices or even one single solitary piece of furniture. Social media is a fascinating realm to dip your toe into and then get out of as regularly as possible. I'm going to switch gears. I want to talk about the players specifically in camp today. Now, you and I have talked about how there's a bit of a melting pot of kids that are coming into Roswell to play for this team. Can you speak to some of the backgrounds or paths that some of the roster has come from?
I have to say, this has been one of the most fascinating cultural experiences that I've had in my professional life and personal career. We've got players from the Caribbean. We've got players from all over the U.S. We have players of different ethnic backgrounds. And it's just wonderful to be able to hear their stories. I spend a little bit of time talking to players. Being life of a pitching coach and life of the pitchers is a little more downtime and a little more transition time. So we get to chat just a little bit more maybe than some of the other players do. And we've got players from Venezuela. We've got players from Cuba. We have players who went to school in Maine, 380 miles north of Bangor. We've got players from schools in Oklahoma, Florida. We have some players who haven't gone to college. And I kind of break the players into four groups. We have some former professional players, low-level rookie ball players, and their talent just shows. And it's wonderful to have them in camp. They're going to make a big impact. We've got some talented college players, guys that really excelled at their colleges for a number of years, and they're going to make contributions. Then we have some other college players who are living out their dream. They wanted to, they're talented, not to the level of all-star high impact. You certainly have to be talented to play college baseball, but they're here more because they want to give it a shot. Can I make a professional team? What is it really like? And they're here. And then we have other players who came on alternative paths. We've got some players that didn't even play college baseball. They've been working out on their own, or they were hurt, or their careers were interrupted so badly by COVID that they didn't have an opportunity to progress through college baseball like a lot of players do. And they're a little bit older, and they're here trying to say, I really want to try to make a professional baseball team. I think I can do it. I'm a little older. I'm more mature. I've been working hard the last 4 or 5 years. Now I'm going to give it a shot. So it's a really, a blend. We actually have one player we think is coming in who's 19. We have some who are 27, some guys who have worked full time, some guys who haven't. And it's just really a extraordinary blend of players. And it makes the experience of learning about them and communicating with them, and also understanding their baseball roots and their athletic roots, because part of that is what a coach needs to understand in order to figure out how can we get that player to excel and make the team. And once the player makes the team, how do they perform well once the season starts?
Now, you had mentioned that you have players from all over, and you'd also mentioned to me while we were preparing for our chat today that you were using catchers in a pitchers meeting to translate. Is that what you were talking about? You were using your catchers to translate?
Oh, Well, I use it with my phone app, Duolingo. I used for the last 4 months to try to learn a little bit more Spanish. I went to high school back in the day when French and German were the most popular languages. So
Yeah.
it tells you a little bit about when I went to high school. And we have a pitcher who was with the, let me think about this for a second. What team was he with? He was with the Cubs, and he doesn't speak hardly any English. I believe he's from the Dominican Republic. Maybe it's Venezuela. I'm sorry for being confused on that. But he hardly speaks any English. And I had to use one of our catchers were at the pitchers meeting yesterday. And I had to speak slowly enough for him to translate for him what I was saying. And it made the meeting go a little bit longer. But it was really important. This is a pitcher who is probably going to play a very big role in our team, and I want him to understand the approach and philosophy. And he's obviously had plenty of professional coaching and been exposed to a high level of coaching. Maybe he's heard a lot of the things that I've said already, but you still want to make sure he understands my philosophy and my approach as a pitching coach. And it was really helpful to have a catcher, he was a catcher from Puerto Rico, who can help translate. And it's just like you see on TV when you've got a player who doesn't speak English well enough to be interviewed, where you're going through three people to share information. And I double checked afterwards to make sure, was I speaking at the right pace? Was I stopping at the right time so that he had a chance to share the information? And it worked out very well.
Do you have a feel as of yet of anybody that you think would be, for lack of a better term, a standout, or somebody that you're looking to take a big role with the club so far this year? Can you speak to any of the players that you're looking at as an integral part of the team?
I think we're really going to have to wait until the roster is finalized later this week to talk specifically about players. I think that anything can happen. Players show up unexpectedly, so we don't really want to talk about the composition of the team until we know for sure, because it could change. It could change at the last minute before we set the roster for Thursday's opener.
I wasn't quite sure whether it was time to talk about that yet or not with the way that roster formulation happens in this league. But it's funny you talk about unexpected players. Now, last week you told me a great story about the case of the disappearing ball player. And over the week when we've been chatting about getting this session recorded, you discussed the case of the magically appearing ball player. What's that all about?
I think I was driving. I think it might have even been the day that we talked last Monday. I got a call from one of the players who's here in camp from Massachusetts, a guy he had worked out with, a standout pitcher, NCAA Division III Pitcher of the Year, Gold Glove winner, microscopic ERA, more than 10 Ks per 9 innings, way over. He had tried to hook on with a couple of teams in the Frontier League, which is an independent minor league. It's affiliated with MLB because they get some funding and they have a working relationship, but the teams are independent. He was in Montana. He'd been cut by his team, and he was in the airport waiting to come home. He was going to go to Massachusetts, and I got a hold of him in the airport and said, wait, before you go back to Massachusetts, instead of flying back to Logan Airport in Boston, maybe you can change your ticket and you can fly to Dallas and you can get a flight to Roswell and you can be here tonight. And he was very enthusiastic about the opportunity and very excited about it because he had just been cut by the Frontier League and he thought he was going to have a longer time to show his abilities. We still think it's possible the player is going to join us. But that's how it works. You think that you've got a player who is going to be coming to camp, and all of a sudden they disappear, never to be heard from again. You're getting ready for camp, and it's almost like a player drops out of the sky. Now we're not sure if he's going to land in Roswell or if he's going to land somewhere else, but we're hoping that we're going to hear from him in the next couple of days that he can make it. But this just tells you a little bit more about independent baseball, is that there are just so many things happening, especially at this time of year when the other independent leagues, the Frontier League, the Pioneer League especially, but also the American Association and the Atlantic League is a little bit higher level of independent ball. But their players are transitioning as teams refine their rosters. So we're getting players that way, and we're also getting them from other Pecos League teams. So we've got there's 16 teams in the Pecos League. There's 6 in the Pacific Division in California, 10 here in the Mountain Division, and they're all holding. At the Pacific Division is underway. Their rosters are final, actually, I should say. But we're all in training camp here in the Mountain Division, and players are finding out with their team that they're not making the roster. And so we have an opportunity to evaluate the players that have been released there. And we're hoping to get a couple more to join us in camp over the next couple of days.
Well, once again, Evan Katz has given us a window into what it's like to put together a Pecos League team. And next week, he's going to be able to start talking to us about how a regular season kicks off for his club and the outlook for the summer. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation as we move forward to kind of watch how Roswell flourishes and takes off beginning when? Thursday night, May 30th at 6:30 p.m., the Roswell Invaders begin the season at home at Joe Bauman Field against the Austin Weirdos. If you're in the area, tickets, schedule information, and more are available at roswellinvaders.com and at the ballpark. Live game streaming options are also available at the website too. So if you can't get to the ballpark, hit roswellinvaders.com. There's a live streaming button, and you too can take part in all the action at Joe Bauman Field. Now, finally, if you're a hardcore baseball fan, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community, offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom. SABR boasts more than 35 different research committees and over 70 regional chapters, not to mention innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information on that, go to sabr.org/join today. Hey, Evan, this has been a pretty nice conversation. I'm very interested to see how your team unfolds, man. You ready to do this again next week?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be able to report on our first series against Austin, the Austin Weirdos. And after that, we will be traveling to Pecos, Texas to play the Pecos Bills. They're an expansion team, and we'll be down in Pecos for a couple of days. That's on the agenda for the first few days of the regular season.
All right, well, we're looking forward to hearing how the season kicks off for Roswell, so we'll get that started next week as well. For Evan Katz, my name is Bruce McClure. This has been Baseball's Last Frontier, Stories from the Pecos League. We both would like to thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.